Welcome to the Retro Boost podcast, where adventures spring to life. I don't know. It's a theme park now. Come on in.
Yep.
Is there a theme park? Well, actually, before I even jump into that, so a new Indiana Jones movie came out like 17 million hours ago, or whenever it came out. We're not even like remotely on point to be having a conversation about that movie or close to the release of that movie, but Indiana Jones just kind of popped into our heads a few days ago, and we wanted to talk about the movies. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about Indiana Jones, really focusing on 1, 2, and 3. But 4 is going to be in there as well. 4 is the best.
That's fine. Yeah. So I love. I've only seen. Well, I've seen Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I think I saw it in theaters, but I have not seen it since. You said primarily we're going to discuss 1, 2, and 3. Those films are very, very near and dear to me. Growing up, we watched them a lot. A lot of our inside family jokes. A lot of them came from Temple of Doom, which is a film that I really love. But I love all 3 of them, and I'm looking forward to getting into some dialogue with you about it, bruh.
I lied to you. This is a Kingdom of the Crystal Skull cast. That'll be the focus of today. So
I'm not going to have a lot of good dialogue then.
There's no such thing as bad dialogue.
There you go.
There is. There absolutely is. No, I want to bring it up because I think that movie has been beaten down. It was beaten down pretty mercilessly when it first came out, but a lot of people have started to turn on it a little bit recently. Neither of us have seen Dial of Destiny. And I'll be honest, when I was younger and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was on the horizon, I was pretty excited for it. I felt nothing when Dial of Destiny was announced or came out. And maybe that's because Crystal Skull, disappointed in its day. So the expectation was just, it's probably going to suck.
I just have no faith that the Mouse House is going to make anything worth my time at this point. And the trailer, I thought was hype, the way that they kind of snuck the theme song into it. But yeah. I'm kind of the same with you. I didn't feel anything when it came out.
Nah.
Yeah.
I had seen the originals when I was pretty young. We had them on DVD, and I would watch them all the time. So they were definitely among some of my favorite movies to throw on all the time. I thought Indiana Jones is pretty cool. So I like him. Did some homework today. I decided to watch a little bit of the making of Raiders of the Lost Ark. Because Indiana Jones is one of those movies that, kind of like Jaws, there's trivia that just everyone seems to be aware of. And I thought to myself, I could totally parrot some of that, and there's always the off chance that someone watching doesn't know what that stuff is. But I also was I want to watch this for myself, as opposed to just pull from IMDb trivia and see if I can spot some cool new things that I didn't know that I could share. So some of these things I got here are from the making of Raiders of the Lost Ark. So I got the 4K collection of Indiana Jones. They released those on 4K 2 years ago. And it was all 4 of the movies, 4K discs, and it came with one extra Blu-ray that has all of the making-ofs of all the movies on that one disc, which is pretty cool. So that's how I watched it. But there were some interesting things that I thought were kind of cool about watching Indiana Jones. Now, the first thing, where do you think the name Indiana comes from?
Is it a dog's name?
It is.
Yeah.
Now the question is,
there you go.
Whose dog?
George Lucas?
Yes.
Nice.
So in the movie, in the flashback, so we get to see young Indiana Jones, in the third movie, The Last Crusade. And then we have some little story things and comments to kind of flesh out a little bit of the character's past, and that's when his father reveals that we named the dog Indiana. Well, that's also true for real life because Indiana comes from George Lucas's dog name. Now, where it gets more interesting, than I didn't know this, in that same sentence, when Lucas is sitting there in the making of saying that the dog's name was Indiana, that's also the same creature that was the jumping off point for the design of Chewbacca.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, so he basically created or had the idea, I guess, for like Wookiees from his dog, Indiana, and then subsequently named Indiana Jones after the dog. So the dog has a foothold in two different Lucas franchises.
That's interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed a few interesting things in the first film. There's a lot of notes from the Jaws soundtrack that I found and I don't know, and it's so ironic that you brought up Jaws a minute ago because there's a scene in the first film with a submarine and a ship, and there's a certain sound that I heard from the soundtrack during that scene, and I was like, man, that sounds like it's straight out of Jaws. So I'm curious. I just thought that was a really interesting data point.
I'll have to. Do you have like any specific scenes in mind? Because I'll have to like really, kind of, really put my ears open to those moments next time I throw them on or something.
Yeah, it's the only scene in the first film when they're on the water. It's in probably the third act of the film. It's when Indiana is on the big tanker that he used to smuggle the Ark on, and the Nazis come up on the sub, raid the boat, and then he swims to the sub, which that's not how that would work at all, but whatever. And there's a certain beat on the soundtrack during that scene. You'll know it. Trust me, you'll know it. But it's during that scene, probably right before the third act in the first film starts. But it really piqued my ear, and I turned to the wife and I said, "Did that not sound like Jaws to you?" And she was like, "Oh my God, it did."
I'll have to.
So yeah, very. It was very interesting for sure.
The other thing that I didn't know is the person who was originally seems like was gonna be Indiana Jones. So they did test screening and they got footage of this test screen in the making of. I thought it was kind of weird. It doesn't really seem like that good to me, but Lucas was like all hype on it. Tom Selleck of Magnum PI and then Blue Bloods, probably a recent big thing people know him for. They did like a test screen with him. They're doing the bar scene where like he meets Marion, like all that stuff. He's in the costume and everything, like at least like a cheap kind of throw-on version of it. And the only reason it seems that he couldn't do it was because of commitments to Magnum PI prevented him from being able to participate. Otherwise, I think he would have done it. And then their fall. The initial pick was, why don't we use Ford again? And Lucas was like, I don't want to. He basically says like he doesn't want to kind of create like a reliance on one actor or like always bring in one actor to fill this kind of role. Like it sounds like he wanted to avoid having like a crew, like some directors are known to have, you know, like the Chris Nolan crew, the Adam Sandler crew, etc. The James Cameron crew, Arnold and Bill Paxton, Michael Bain. Like the directors had their favorites, and it sounds like Lucas was trying to kind of avoid going down a road like that to an extent. But when Tom Selleck couldn't do it, they went back to Ford and brought Ford into it. He ended up being the second thing. So that was kind of cool. Like I just kind of assumed like Lucas had just come off of Star Wars, so naturally Harrison Ford makes sense, and that seems like how it started, but not where it went for a little bit there, and that was kind of cool.
Yeah, that's so interesting because like from my point of view as a fan, like I can't see anybody else playing that role, and I think it kind of speaks to how well Harrison Ford can kind of form fit to a role. But he does play the leading man so well. Even though it's funny because Han Solo is for sure not the leading man in Star Wars, but yeah, I can't see anybody else besides Harrison Ford playing Indiana Jones. So it's interesting that he almost didn't. You know, what kind of world would that be when Harrison Ford does not play Indiana Jones? It's not a world that I want to live in.
I also heard Ford say that he said, quote, or not quote, but like paraphrasing, he said like he was apprehensive about signing on for 3 movies. And I was like, I didn't realize that they had plans to make 3 of them like out of the gate. That's pretty brazen.
100%.
Because that, he struck gold with Star Wars, but they kind of expected Star Wars to flop. Like they talk about that. Because so Lucas and Spielberg had been friends like forever. They met in the late 60s. Indiana Jones is the first time the two of them actually like did a picture together, from what I understand from this video. So they were on a vacation together in Hawaii because Lucas kind of wanted to like be away and bunker down to brace himself for the inevitable news that Star Wars is a box office flop. But then the opposite happened, and it's a big hit. But even then, Indiana Jones was a new IP, so like it's still a risky thing to just jump into a new IP, let alone commit to 3 of them, which is pretty interesting. I thought that was kind of nuts. Like I didn't realize that. It's not a franchise that I envisioned like them having a grand plan for. But then something kind of occurred to me. They talked about how they basically like wrote out the first movie. Well, actually, it's worth mentioning that Lucas had the idea for Indiana Jones and Star Wars kind of at the same time. He was like, I want to make like some kind of serialized fantasy type thing. One's in space, one's like this archaeologist guy, and space is what won that war. And he just kind of kept shelving Indiana Jones for a while. So it sounds like they had a bunch of ideas for action sequences, and they kind of started with those and worked backwards. So I envisioned the whole idea. This is just my theory. They probably the whole idea of there being 3 movies is because they probably thought of more scenarios and situations that wouldn't make sense in the first film. And they're like, oh, we could do more of these, and that's when this scene comes into play. That's where that thing comes into play. I'm not sure if they end up talking about that later on in that same documentary. I didn't watch the entire thing, but that was like the impression that I got. Because apparently they just like sat down and like not apparently they did. Spielberg and the writer and someone else like sat down and over 3 days like created the whole screenplay with a voice recorder. And then this guy then hand wrote the whole thing. Dude hand wrote the entire screenplay. Refused to use a typewriter. Didn't like using typewriters. So he hand wrote the whole thing, and he showed it off in the documentary. And I was like, dude, my hand would fall off. Like
that's
if I
crazy.
had to write that. That's how they put it together, though. So that is the last of the new stuff that I didn't know that I wanted to share. The one trivia that a lot of people know, I want to say that I first learned this from James Rolfe. I kind of consider this to be like, did you know the shark's name was Bruce of Indiana Jones trivia? They're all references to like 1930s and 40s action serials. I know that a lot of them are based off of like Humphrey Bogart stuff specifically, to the point that if you look it up, you will find like exact scenes that have been recreated in Indiana Jones from these stuff in like the 30s and 40s, like the truck stuff,
Interesting,
hanging off the truck and the bridge getting cut in half and whatnot. So some of it's like they're re-envisioning, remaking older stuff as like a homage, new spin, etc. Yeah, I learned that one a long time ago, but the rest of it was all kind of new stuff to me, which is pretty cool.
Well, it was funny because the one you just said I had no idea about, but some of the other stuff I did know about. It's kind of crazy the way that works.
Yeah,
but yeah, finished the first film not too long ago, and I enjoyed it quite a bit more than I thought I was going to. I thought it was going to feel kind of dated, but It actually didn't. It's so cool because, I've watched the first one probably the least amount. Obviously more than four, but the least amount when you compare it, to one, two, and three. So I wasn't exactly sure how I would feel about it, but it really, really, you can absolutely see where two and three get some of their set style, some of their beats, just like the way that an Indiana Jones film plays out. You can just absolutely see where it started in the first film, and it's funny because and I credit the creators for this because one is infinitely more similar to three than it is to two, and I think that's one of the things that I like most about two, and we'll get into two, but I really enjoyed one a lot more than I thought I was going to. I enjoyed Marion a lot. The villain was really, really great. The guy that burns his hand in the bar scene that you were referring to. The bar scene I really, really enjoyed. It had those really funny kind of we've talked a lot about subtle comedic approach, and I think really all three of these films have of moments where you're like, wow, that is brutal, that is like violent, like what are we doing? And then there will be these very subtle comedic beats, and I think that's kind of like a macro feeling for one, two, and three. It's got these really scary beats, but then it's got these like really subtle, hilarious moments, and it's just a part that makes the series endearing and just very, very unique that they just continue to pull that off. But yeah, it was just great to kind of see where the series started from, and that it maintained those comedic beats from 1, 2, and 3. It was really, really entertaining for sure.
Yeah, the way that they mix in that, like, what's the right term, brevity or whatever, into those moments to kind of like keep the whole vibe like bouncy. And like a really good example of that being used incredibly effectively in like the first movie is like during the big truck scene when he's like fighting tooth and nail to get control of that truck. There's a moment where like they kind of go off the road and both Indiana and the truck driver both like freak out, and they both like together get the truck back on the road, and they even like look at each other and go like, oh, that was a close one, right? And like there's just like 2 seconds where they're like friends, and then Indiana Jones just slams him out of the door. Like moments like that are what that franchise does really well. And even with 2 being like the darker one, it still has plenty of moments like that, whether it be shenanigans with Willie or stuff otherwise. Like, it finds ways to inject a little bit of lightness into it, although that one is like the most persistently dark out of all of them. Don't know how dark or not Dial of Destiny is, obviously, but the other ones are pretty light in comparison.
Well, I was surprised when I went back and watched the first film. 15 minutes in, you literally see a dude that's been like pierced in half with like spikes, and I was sitting down and I was just enjoying the film, and he turns and sees that guy with like spikes through his body, and I was like, whoa, like I was not expecting to see that, because you get this kind of idea of these films, and they are dark, but they do have that kind of funny, bouncy element to them, and I was just not expecting 15 minutes in the film to see a corpse with spikes through his body. It just took me back a lot. But yeah, it was cool. I was just surprised for sure.
I don't know about Last Crusade, but I know that Temple of Doom and Raiders would have been before PG-13 existed. So there's like a different ceiling to what they can get away with before it becomes like R-rated. And to your point, like, the first one in particular has like a lot of stuff like that. I mean, between the corpse getting like, it's Alfred Molina, by the way. That guy would go on to play Doc Ock in Spider-Man.
I did not realize that.
Yes. Yes.
Interesting.
he returned as
Oh.
Doc Ock in that last Spider-Man thing. Um, uh, you get that. There's like all the head explosions and stuff that happen at the end. I mean, you like the dude's face, like his skin and then flesh, like melt off rapidly. Like that is some pretty extreme on-screen violence, even if it is only brief moments. It's kind of like Jaws. Like Jaws
Yeah.
doesn't have a lot either, but like when it does, it goes all out. Like the severed leg floating to the bottom of the ocean. Like what little gore there is, like it's pretty extreme when it is there.
Yeah, the bar scene fight. There's a headshot in that scene that I did not expect as well. The guy is like kind of on fire or whatever, and then he gets shot, and like his whole face is just like, and I was like, oh, it was just like each time the film took that step, I was not prepared for it like at all.
It's that's part of the weird thing about rewatching the first one for me in particular, because like it is also the one that I've probably rewatched the least as well. But like I do often find myself surprised at like the grittiness to it all. Um, I will say too, one thing that the first one really has going for it that the second and third one don't as much is because so much of it is like practical effects and clever use of miniatures and other things with their set design. It really helps it hold up. Like
Oh yeah.
you definitely have more moments where you can kind of see the cracks in 2 and 3 because of some dated effects. To me, the big standout for Temple of Doom is when Short Round is like hung between the two mine carts. It's like very obviously like a stretchy dummy. Stuff like that like starts to show its age, but like Raiders seems to be pretty timeless with how it chose to approach its effects.
Yeah.
Even like the supernatural parts of it are like those kind of Ghostbustery type like spirits that just kind of look like they look, and like it doesn't really hurt them to be modern, and the reliance on blue screen and whatnot's pretty minimal, so like it helps it really well.
Yeah, I was really worried about how that final scene, with the arc, how that was gonna look, because my wife hadn't seen it in a while, and I was like, oh man, we're coming to the third act, because I knew like Buddy's like face starts to melt, whatever, and I was like, how is this gonna look? Is this gonna look really, really bad? No, it's like to your point, like it looked great, and I didn't think that like it didn't really feel dated. I mean, of course, it looked, old, but it didn't
Yeah.
look bad.
That was a pretty
I
simple effect too. I remember seeing. I must have watched the making of when I was younger too, because I remember seeing them show this. So I probably saw the making of when I was younger as well. It's a time elapse. They like built this dummy thing, and like it's layers of stuff that'll melt with time. I don't remember if there's a heater. There probably was a heater on it. But bottom line is they filmed it like melting in real time, and I think if I remember what I saw correctly, there was definitely some decision making in how they layered it because they wanted it to melt in a very specific way. All that really ended up being like in simplicity. It's just a shot that was fast forwarded to create that melting of the different layers. It's simple but effective, and that's why it holds up so much better because it's not some kind of weird effect or something.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one point, kind of going to like the general themes of the film, I like the fact that Nazis were the villain. It's really, really easy to root against them, and I think the fact that they're the
Fair.
villains in yeah, they're the villains in 1 and 3, and it's just a really easy thing to root against, right? They're done so well. There's the scene when the main villain in the first film salutes, and you see the burned thing in his hand in the beginning of the film. That was great because I did not expect that at all. And that guy in particular really surprised me with how much, when he's on screen, the film is better. and you know, in a film when you have Harrison Ford in it, it's hard to take the spotlight away from him. But the villain in one, I enjoyed quite a bit more than and there's really two villains, to be honest with you. There's
Yeah,
the
you gotta
main
remember
guy
Belloc.
from the beginning, yeah,
Well, he
and
comes
then you
back, too.
have he does, yeah.
Yeah.
But
He's like
yeah, it was great.
Belloc is like evil Indiana Jones. He's like if Indiana Jones sold out, that's what he would turn into. He'd turn into that guy.
100%. One of the best scenes in the first film that I really loved, and it was in my notes for tonight, was in the third act, right before they go to the Ark scene. Dr. Jones gets an RPG, and he comes to the side, and they're all down on this cliff, and he threatens to blow it all up. And that villain is like, "Do it, go ahead,
Send it
do
back
it."
to God.
Right, and he's like, he's not gonna do it. But that's so great because like those two characters, and it goes to your exact point. Like those two think the exact same, except one is good and one is bad. But as far as like the artifact part, like they're the same guy. And that was a great scene because the whole time I'm sitting here going, he's not going to shoot it. He's not going to shoot it. There's no way he's going to shoot it. No way. Indiana Jones would not destroy the Ark. He would not. And he was correct. And he rolled the dice there, and he was right. And that was a scene that I was like, oh man, that is so good, you know?
Now, one side discussion. I said that Belloc is like evil Indiana Jones. The reality is, I don't know that I could really call Indy a good guy either.
Oh no.
So,
Yeah.
a common joke that you see thrown around with like the Uncharted games, which much like Tomb Raider are definitely inspired to some degree by Indiana Jones, is that like Nathan Drake is like the world's most notorious mass murderer, wanted in every state and country for triple-digit body counts. But like, that's pretty close to the source material because Indiana Jones is also like a serial killer of sorts. His MO was that he murders people around archaeological digs.
Yeah.
He's kind of a psychopath.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, think about this. Because like he's a teacher, like before, during, and after Raiders of the Lost Ark, right? What'd you do this summer, Professor Jones? I got my term paper here for you. Oh well, I hitched a ride on a Nazi U-boat and then threatened to kill a bunch of Nazi soldiers and my girlfriend at the time with an RPG.
Yeah.
It's a good summer. And before that, I killed a lot of people. I mean, my girlfriend took an anti-aircraft like gun and like exploded a whole truck full of soldiers. She's probably worse than me, but yeah, it's a good time. Can't go back to Egypt, obviously.
Crazy. Crazy.
So like that part of it, I think is kind of funny. That like he kills a lot of people in those movies.
Yeah, 100%.
And then goes back to teach. I also can't help but feel that there's ethical concerns with him, like outright stealing stuff and like bringing it back to a university, because like he steals the cross from the dude as an adult in the opening of Last Crusade, like.
Which is so good.
That guy wasn't a villain. He literally had like a permit to dig where he found that thing, as revealed as a twist. So like he just hunted that man down and murdered him and took the cross back.
This belongs in a museum. So do you. So good, dude. So good. So good. Man.
That's what he says. That's his murderer line. So like the Joker said, "You ever dance with the devil in the pale moonlight?" Indiana Jones, when he's about to kill you, says it belongs in a museum.
Oh man. So Temple of Doom.
Well, before we go to that, I want to do. I have one question for each movie. So here's the question for Raiders.
Heck yeah, let's do it.
What's your favorite scene?
My favorite scene in the first film is probably there's a really interesting scene that I forgot about, that when I saw it I was like, man, that is so good. He is sitting down with the one of the villains, and all of a sudden, a bunch of dudes in the room pulls a gun and points it at Indiana, and all of a sudden, a bunch of kids run in the room and surround him, and I'm like, what is going on right now? And I thought that was a really, really cool scene. It was either that or it was the RPG scene for sure, when he has to battle with, does he want to destroy this thing? Does he want to save the girl? What does he want to do? And the way that the villain kind of plays off on that, I just loved. So it's one of those two scenes, and I think they both kind of speak to the internal character of Indiana Jones, both in a good way and in a bad. But those two for sure, 1A and 1B.
For me, I think my favorite moment from the Raiders is the fight in the airfield.
Oh yeah.
I think that's a great scene of like escalating chaos, because it starts with just let's take that plane and get out of here, and then like within a few minutes it's turned into the plane is spinning, the latch is locked, she can't get out, the fuel is leaking, he's fighting the guy, and I feel like that fight also has plenty of those like signature kind of little funny injections where like he starts 100%. By pointing at the ground and then like sucker punches the guy. He goes to get up and he's like, give me a second. Like when he goes to get up. Great scene. Great score over that scene too. That's my favorite.
And then that dude meets a horrible end.
Probably has one of the most iconic deaths in the entire franchise, is that guy's death. Family Guy like did a homage to it whole hog, where the chicken gets bladed instead of the guy.
Yeah, I remember, dude. That's great.
And now, Temple of Doom, the prequel, which I remember getting into an argument with a friend over that's a prequel or not. It's a prequel. It takes place before Raiders.
Interesting.
Gives away by the years that are shown. That's the giveaway. Takes place a few years earlier.
Interesting. Nice. Yep. Very cool. Love me some Temple of Doom. I absolutely love this film. It was we watched it so many times as kids. One of the things that I like the most about it is it's so different from 1 and 3, both in like environments, right, and then in themes. And I told the wife this today, and it's something that I didn't really consider until kind of going through the films today. Was in the first film, he's kind of like a lone warrior, right? He's this guy that goes and gets the girl, and all of that. And then 2, he's like a dad, and then in 3, he's like a son. So it's so interesting how in 1, 2, and 3 he fills different like psyche roles. I'm not sure how I'm explaining that right, but it's just 2 is just such an interesting film because of the relationship with Short Round and kind of how that plays out throughout the film. But love me some 2, man. It's really, really great.
Going off of that, and these aren't my thoughts, and I never thought of it like this before until recently, but like the Mr. Sunday Movies podcast was talking about these movies like earlier this year, and they brought up an interesting point that Temple of Doom is like the movie where Indiana Jones like kind of learns to be better, because like he starts off as what could be seen as a pretty cold and like greed-driven individual about like getting stuff and getting paid, and then like at the end like chooses to give up that last Shankara stone to give it back to the village, stuff like that. Like he goes through he goes through a change basically. He's still a complete like unmitigated psychopath that murders people, but at least he learns to give back to the local communities to an extent. But I never thought of what you just said. That's a really good point. I never thought of that. He is very much like a loner who kind of struggles to accept help from people in Raiders, and then he's like a guy that like has people relying on him, in Temple, and then he's the son, trying to kind of like be
Prove
seen
himself to
by
his
his
dad.
dad.
Yeah,
Yeah,
be
prove
seen. Yep.
himself, be appreciated. Um, so I never thought of that. Like I didn't really notice that. It's a really good thought. Um, I
Yeah,
really like
for
Temple
sure.
of Doom. It was probably the one that I rewatched the least back when I
So
was a
interesting.
kid, but I've kind of come around on it, and I like it a lot more than I used to.
Hmm.
I think the opening scene is like hilariously insane and weird. And it's
Anything goes.
anything goes. I think it's a little clumsy that they introduce like this guy that he's been like partnered with for an undefined period of time that just gets killed immediately.
Yeah.
We also just don't know like a lot of the details about how short round fits into it. But I will
Yep.
say, people like way back then, like early YouTube days of movie reviews, like everyone was kind of hating on short round being annoying or whatever. I have always
Oh
liked short
no.
round. He's
Yeah,
the
he's
best.
great.
He's reliable. He doesn't need to be saved constantly. He's cool. I love the relationship between the two of them.
Oh yeah.
I think that moment is it's like borderline a tear jerking scene when like he gets him out of brainwashing and they hug or whatever afterward. Like it's really good.
Oh yeah.
I think it's a great moments. Even Willie has like come around on me. People used to dump on her role in the movie all the time, but I think she's hilarious.
Well, she's got some great lines, man. There's the one in the boat where she's like, I hate water, I hate getting wet, and I hate you. Like, so good, dude.
There's even stuff that like I didn't get as a kid that I find absolutely hysterical now as an adult, where like he fights off the assassin in his room, and then when he like kicks in the door to her room, she's like, "Be gentle," like
Yeah.
as he comes
And
toward
then
her.
he's like, nope, not even
Just right past
thinking
her.
about any of that. Just have to make sure that you're safe. And again, kind of plays into the character that he is in that film. You know, the whole crux of the story is that he's gonna go save a bunch of kids. So it's just like the whole selfless, you know, journey that he's on into. Just has, you know, a lot of the themes of the film kind of fit in that.
See, that's
And
that's
I
the
think
thing though.
that's
He's
just
not
kind of one more.
where it gets interesting that I never really picked up on is I don't think he is selfless. Not until like a significant way of the way in. I'm pretty sure that he's talking about like trying to find and sell the Shankara stones when he first learns that they might actually exist. I might have to watch it again or maybe like Google it real quick, but I'm pretty sure that he's talking about like fabulous riches or something when like they first see all three of them like right there, and then when they sneak in for the first time. But then I think the moment where like he really kind of has this like wave of consciousness sweep is when he first gets a look at the mines and sees all the kids chained up, and like he gets so visibly upset that he throws a rock at a guy.
Yep.
Like totally giving himself away, but like he just got so angry he had to do it. And I think that moment is where things like start to change for him. Which leads to my favorite moment in that movie. It's the fantastic reveal of post him getting his brains back, and he the minecart lights him up, and then he punches that guy so hard that the dude flies like 50 feet and slides to the ground. He's dead. That punch killed him. Like that's like getting hit by a train
Instantly.
He got hit by a train basically, so like he's dead. But I
Yeah.
love that moment, like his just angry face as the light lights him up with this hat on is like so cool. What's your favorite moment?
My favorite moment in Temple of Doom is probably the third act on the bridge when he turns the blade to the rope, and when it cuts back and you see the look on the villain's face. That whole scenario when he cuts the bridge and they all fall, and then they're crawling up the thing, and then I think his name is, what is it, Mularam? Is that his name? The main villain. Yeah, I think it's Mularam.
Yeah, Molaram's
Molaram,
the
yeah.
priest guy.
Yeah, yeah. He's got his hand on his heart, and the stones start getting hot, and they start falling out of his thing, and just the energy of that entire scene is just so cool, and yeah, that's it for me, and the way that they kind of threw in like Crocs, which I love, like give me more of that, you know what I mean? But that whole the lines between the two of them during that scene are so good. And then of course he falls, and then you think that he fell too, and the way that the camera work is there, it's a very suspenseful moment in the film, and of course you're like, Indiana's not dead, like what are we doing here? But the way that the film kind of plays that, and because of the character that he had played in that film, and the whole like he saved the kids, and his relationship with Short Round, and in the beginning when they first get to the village, and he's like, you're embarrassing me, this is more food than these people eat in a week, like what are you doing? Just so many beats in the film where he kind of showed kind of an empathetic approach to life. The viewer had kind of built through the film this kind of emotional connection to him, and the way that scene works, I've seen it a million times, and every single time it still hits, and that's the sign of a great film, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I like it quite a bit. I think it's a good time. It is extraordinarily dark compared to the others. I mean, between just the mood
hearts
of the whole thing, like the dread, the level of dread present once they get underground, and then guy's heart getting torn out on screen, then that same guy getting like immolated as he gets lowered in the lava.
Roasted.
Like all the other stuff, it's like, damn, dude. It's a lot more intense than the other ones are, but that kind of lends to the payoff though of it being like really cool though, because like everyone likes to see kids get saved, so like they put these poor kids in this horrible situation, and like you just love that they've all been rescued and brought back to their families, and the evil.
He's a hero in that film. He's a hero, and I'm not sure that
genuinely is. Yeah.
Yeah, and two, like, or three, like, would you consider him a hero? I guess he saved the world because
He's out for
the
himself.
Nazis didn't get but he's there for himself. And then in one, it's the same thing. He's there for the Ark, and a girl. But two, he's a genuine hero, and I think that's one of the things that makes Temple of Doom so great, is he plays that role so well.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good one. The only other thing with two, I lost it. Stick with the minecart thing. The minecart chase is pretty cool. That's what it was. Theme park. Did they there's gotta be at some point, past or present or whatever, was there ever like a Indiana Jones amusement park ride that was the minecart themed?
So the only amusement park thing that I have ever been a part of is I did get to watch the Indiana Jones live show, which was really cool. Very fun. It's like this huge stage, and they like play out the first film on stage. There's like a moment when he's running from the giant rock. It's very cool. Yeah, but it was a Disney. Was it Disney? Yeah, like live show. Maybe it was. Anyway, I know that there was some live show that I saw when I was a kid, and I really, really enjoyed it. There was like the rolling rock from the first film, and he's running from it, and he dives, and then there's like a part when there's a plane on the set, and he's fighting some dude. It's really, really cool. But I don't think that there was an actual ride at any point in time.
Man, if there wasn't, that's a big missed opportunity, because that's the most adaptable thing for a roller coaster ever put into films, because it just is a roller coaster in the movie.
Well, Nintendo is doing a DK World and you have to think that one of their rides are going to be some sort of a minecart thing because of how many times you did that in DKC 1, 2, and 3. So they may get to it first. I don't know. Stay tuned.
Yeah, that's a cool sequence. That's probably one of the most iconic things in that film, besides the heart ripping thing. For most people, is the cart chase.
Oh yeah,
But
I
now-
can't tell you how many times when I was a kid, trying to rip a heart out of someone's chest that I didn't like.
Well, I mean, trying like you were doing it.
Oh yeah, yeah. Was it believe how do, believe how do, believe? And it never worked.
Simple schoolyard brawl.
There you
Mr.
go.
and Mrs. Dooland. He did remove the child's heart.
Yes.
We found a way to put it back. Luckily, the damage wasn't permanent.
He tried to set it on fire too.
He was calling out to Shiva.
One more thing that I want to bring up about too is the dining room scene is so good when the dude drops the snake and he's like, "Ooh, snake surprise!" and she's like, "What's the surprise?" Like the way she says that line is so good, and they cut the snake and you see all the little snakes come out. Ugh. That scene is so good, and of course you can't miss the chilled monkey brains, like so good.
Yeah,
So
I'm gonna
good.
have to try all that because it's easy to jerk away as a. But for all we know, that stuff tastes super good. There's no way to know for sure.
Yeah.
It was funny how there's also like a line in the movie Clue that makes me think of that scene where Tim Curry is like something about monkey brains. He's like, Cambodian monkey brains, though a delicacy here. And I was like, ha! It's like the monkey brains thing.
Nice. All right.
Now,
Moving on.
The Last Crusade.
Hmm.
Regarded by most to be the best Indiana Jones. Agree? Disagree?
My opinion of these three films, I pretty much have the same opinion that I have of A New Hope, Empire, and Return. The one that I enjoy the most, I admit, is not the best one. I enjoy Temple of Doom the most, but the best one is the third film, and that's just kind of my opinion. I enjoy Temple the most, but I admit that Last Crusade, I believe, is the best of the three. What do you think?
Yeah, I would say that I probably enjoy and think that Crusade's the best. I think it's got the most going on out of any of them, between just the grand scope of the MacGuffin of that movie, finding the Holy Grail. Like that's a myth and a story that like all of us have been told at some point. So it's like a lot of people can relate to the gravity of finding that, and add to that the mixture of the relationship with him and his dad, and like how well Sean Connery nails the role, and how creative the action sequences are, and just how grand in scope that whole movie is. It's just like the total package. I think that everything that's good about Indiana Jones is in that movie. If you wanted to use it as a way to like advertise like what Indiana Jones is, you'd pull all your clips ideally from that movie. It's just so good. So I think it's the best out of all of them personally. I would agree with what the majority have to say.
Yeah, the Sean Connery ad just kind of puts that film above. He just does such a great job in that role, and the dynamic between him and Harrison Ford is just so good. And the way that he's utilized in the film too, the way that you don't really, he's not a part of the film really at all until like what 30-40 minutes into the film.
Yeah, it's pretty deep in.
And then once he's there, the film goes from like, yeah, this is pretty good, to like, whoa, this is really, really good. There's the film on the beach with the birds when he's doing the umbrella, and the lines that follow that. I can't recite them, but So good. And the way that when they're on the plane and he's got the gun and he shoots the kid, he's like, "I'm
So,
sorry, son, they got us." Like,
us.
that's just so good, and it just kind of goes back to what we've been saying the whole time about the way that the series treats these really subtle comedic beats so well, and Last Crusade is just riddled with them. But then it's got these like serious, things like in the third act, that guy trying to do the test gets his head cut off, and you see his head rolling down the steps, and it's like, what are we doing right now? Like, it was just like a corny joke that made us all laugh. Like, and now we're seeing dudes' heads roll, and like, what's going on right now?
Right, it's like Deadpool made a joke about that in the beginning of the movie. There's like, my boyfriend told me that this was a superhero film, but this guy just turned that dude into a kebab. What's going on?
Yeah.
Like, I thought this was a family picture. Now this guy's head just got rolled off. No.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah. Once again, Indiana Jones's humor and whatnot is balanced against this like heinous violence that happens every now and then.
Yeah.
Although Last Crusade probably has the least of that out of all of them. I think that head moment's like the only one that comes to mind for me, as far as like just crazy on-screen violence. Temple of Doom sure has its fair share, and so does the first one. But I don't know that Crusade does a whole lot compared to the other two.
Yeah, you're probably right.
The only other moment I can think of is when, at the end of the tank sequence, the tank goes over the cliff, and like the officer is like on the top of it, like as it goes down, you kind of see him go down with it, and like,
yeah,
there's implied horrible violence. You don't see it though. Obviously, he got turned into a tube of dispensed toothpaste by the tank falling on him, but like, we don't see it.
100%. Yeah, I remember as a child seeing that scene and like pointing out, like, "Oh my gosh, you can see him! You can see him sitting in the tank."
It's a fun
because
detail.
a lot of films would just kind of cut him out and like whatever. But yeah, 3 is just well. And then there's the supporting cast. You have the return of Brody, and probably one of the funniest lines in the entire film is when he's like, Brody's got the book, and he's like, "Okay, we can find him." He's like, "He's got friends anywhere. He speaks a dozen languages. With any luck, he's got the Grail already." And then it cuts to him. Does anyone here speak English?
He's like completely useless.
Oh, and then you see Salah, which is so great.
Oh, maybe
the
you
return
bring
of
him
him.
up.
Yeah, he's so good. Run. So good, man.
Yeah.
There's so many moments in 3 that are just like, I love it. It's so good.
I've always wondered if dialing it back to Raiders for just this one remark, I've always wondered if when Sala, he lowers Indy into the chamber where he uses the staff, and then like the Nazis are like, "Hey, what are you doing up there?" And like he runs down to them, but he falls. And I was like, was that like intentional? Like, I've always wondered that, and I don't know, because I feel like he shouldn't have just like ate crap and like rolled down this hill in the middle of this take. But I don't know, maybe it's all part of the show. Always wondered that, but yeah. It was good to have him come back in Crusade, because Crusade like brought everyone back. I mean, yeah, like you said, Brody returns, Sala's back. It's good times.
It brought back the environments from the first film. I mean, if you watch 1 and 3, like the environments are very, very similar. Like even to the point where like the first, second, and third act, if you compare that to 3, it's like almost the exact same. Which again speaks to why I like 2, because it takes all that and just kind of does what it does, anything at once. But yeah, it was great to have Brody back. It was great to have Sala back. It was really, really cool to just kind of have kind of a reunion type scenario in 3.
Yeah. Last Crusade, I think it's just really damn good. It's just like everyone's on their A game. You get a lot of really peak Indiana Jones moments. Sean Connery is amazing as his father, has tons of great lines. You believe that they are father and son. It's awesome. And
Well, in the
then
beginning really helps kind of set that up too. You know, I
yeah,
love the fact you really don't get a lot of backstory for him. So the fact that the third film does this, like the first 15, 20 minutes are when he's a kid, and it just does a lot to kind of build the character. And then when he runs in the house and he's like, "Dad, Dad," and all you really see is him sitting there, you know, doing exactly what he'd been doing with his diary. And he's like, quiet, quiet, or whatever. Like, it's just so great. It just, the dynamic between the two, the way that they build that, um, and in the way that he comes in the film and he breaks the thing on his head, and then he turns it over and he's like, "Oh, that's an artifact." Not even concerned that he just destroyed it on his son's head. Like, just stuff like that. It's so very subtle things that make Last Crusade just so unique and so funny, and you know, a joy to watch.
I will say I think the flashback scene in the opening of Crusade is pretty cool, because like there's something about it that I think is kind of funny. In that one sequence, we get like a lot of the same kind of behavior that we see Indiana Jones doing as an adult. Like, he's intervening and stealing artifacts because he takes some kind of moral high ground to whatever the bad guys are doing. Even though in that instance, like, they were not, as far as we're led to believe, they're not criminals. They had a permit or whatever, or the cops showed up with them. It's beside the point. But then, like, I think it's kind of funny how in the same sequence we get the origin of how he's familiar with whips and sort of why he's afraid of snakes. He may have been afraid of snakes before that, but I mean, if he wasn't, I would assume that getting thrown into a pit full of them would have given him a long-standing fear. It's kind of funny how, like, both of his two most iconic kind of known traits happen on the same day. Get the whip, don't like snakes. But the good thing is that if these movies had come out in the last 10 years, that wouldn't have been the beginning of the third movie. It would have been a freaking prequel film that would have come out at some point. And they would have just done what they did with Solo. Like, do you want a movie that explains where these two dice came from? We got your back, brother. Like, terrible.
Yeah, no, don't give me any of that. I mean, Mouse House announced today that they're going to do a live action Lilo and Stitch, which makes me it makes my blood boil, because if you watch Lilo and Stitch today, the animated film is so good. It's so funny, and they're gonna completely destroy it, and I'm so sad about that. But anyway, sorry, that was unrelated, but very sad.
Favorite scene of Crusade?
The third act.
Just the whole third act.
Well, okay, so the whole, like, test scene, because I feel like everything that Indy had done up until that point had prepared him to do that. His dad gets shot. He's now on a timer. He's got that in his head, so he's trying to go fast, but he doesn't want to die. He's reading from the book. He's reciting it while he's doing it. The penitent man will pass. You know, that it's just it's so good, and it's such a, like, it's got the Raiders of the Lost Ark feel of, like, the lone man who's, like, trying to find treasure. Like, it's got all of that. Then it's got the you know, his dad just got shot, so he's trying to go quick. It's just that part. He just saw a dude get his head cut off, and now he's about to go try to do the same thing.
That part wouldn't scare him. He cut people's heads off himself all the time.
Yeah.
That specific thing would not have affected his mindset, because he probably wishes, if anything, that he could have cut that guy's head off.
Probably, yeah. But just that, the whole test sequence, and then he gets through it, and then picks the cup, and he immediately knows which cup to pick. And the way that they kind of fool the villains into thinking what kind of cup it would appear, it's just so good. But there's so many scenes in that film. You know, it's not the scene with the rats, not a scene that I really really love, but the way that he explains that part to his dad, he's like, "Dad, there were rats, big ones." Like that's really good stuff. When one of the comedic moments that I just absolutely love is when they're both tied to the chair, and his dad's like, she speaks German in her sleep, and you slowly see the wheels start turning. That like, wait a minute, Eskimo brothers, like what's going on right now? We're like, what is this? That part is so great. There's a lot of great scenes, but I think the test part is the one that I enjoy the most because I feel like it's the culmination of everything that we had seen from the characters so far, put into this like there's like a room full of dudes, and they're like, that's the guy who we think can do it, and that's just a really cool scene from a viewer's point of view.
Yeah, I mean that whole sequence is definitely like quintessential Indiana Jones. I mean, it's got the archaeology, solving puzzles, booby traps that'll kill you,
Yep.
and elements of the supernatural. Like it has it all.
Yep.
Now, for me, I think my favorite moment would have to be No Ticket. That to me is also like quintessential
No
Indiana
Ticket.
Jones because like it's very silly, but it's powerful. It's funny. Like he gets like an impromptu disguise and asks the guy from behind for a ticket for no reason other than to just like, I don't know, mess with him. Like he's really leaning into this role that he's taken for himself, and then just slams the dude
So
out of the Zeppelin and then turns around to the shocked audience. No ticket. And they're all like, "Oh God, I got my ticket." Like that to me is like one of those funnier moments. It's absurd. It's great. But then yeah, my runner-up would definitely be like the tests for all the same reasons you said. It's a great sequence. Really good stuff.
Soundtrack in that film too is just so good.
Yeah, I think the soundtrack in all three of them is really good, but I think the third one's definitely the best.
Yes, I would for sure agree with that.
Yeah, they're really good.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, an abridged discussion of Crystal Skull.
Okay.
So, all right. I was definitely on the I hate Crystal Skull bandwagon when it came out. I mean, how could you not be? That stuff was everywhere. I remember that the biggest critique at the time was that aliens don't belong in Indiana Jones, among other complaints, but that seemed to be the chief one.
That was mine.
See, I've really come around on that specific point. Something that Lucas said today that really rang with me was his decision when I was watching this making up thing today. He said, you know, it's got archaeology, it's gritty, it's whatever, and there's like supernatural stuff. And I was like, he used the word supernatural. He didn't use the word religious, because despite the fact that like it's all kind of themed around different religions, he chose the word supernatural, and like that rung something inside of me. And I've always kind of thought this, but like it really kind of made it clear to me today. Like, I don't think that aliens are outside supernatural. Like, I think that's perfectly fine. Like, if that's your theme, that could work. Like, why does it have to be restricted to religious artifacts and elements? Like, I don't know. It's alien artifacts and elements. It's perfectly within line. It's just someone else's stuff. It's not human stuff. Like, so
Sure.
I feel like that's an easy complaint to make. But if you really think about it, I mean, what? For all we know, the things that come out of the Ark of the Covenant are aliens. You don't know what that stuff is. It could be angels or demons or spirits from another dimension. Who's to say? It's supernatural. So just kind of had that specific twist on that existing thought that I've had today, because I just thought that was kind of funny how he chose that word specifically. But yeah, I disagree that it's fundamentally wrong that aliens are the problem with that movie. I think it'd still be flawed if it was something more in line with the franchise. There's still other problems with that film. Aliens are not the worst one.
Yeah, I you know, when I first saw it in theaters, I was so upset that that's the direction that it went in, because I had always kind of felt that there needed to be some sort of like religious element to it, or some sort of like legendary stones that did this thing. Like I always kind of wanted that. And you know, I haven't seen the film in a long time, really, since I saw it in theaters. 2008, I think, is when that movie came out.
Been a minute.
If I saw it now, I probably wouldn't really care, and I would probably enjoy it. Certainly not as much as 1, 2, or 3, but I think my disdain for the film is probably nowhere near as heightened as I think it is. Simply because I haven't seen it so long, and if I were to sit down, I'm sure I would enjoy it. I mean, Shia LaBeouf is in it, so just kidding. That doesn't help the movie at all.
He's all right too. Like, I used to hate him a lot more than that. I've kind of come around to it to an extent. I think it is definitely like super average. Like, it's not a great movie. It's still very mediocre, but I don't hate it for a lot of the same reasons I did back when it first came out. The only thing that I will say I definitely don't like back then, and still don't, the nuclear bomb scene is definitely like a very much jumping the shark moment for that franchise, because Indiana Jones has done a lot of crazy stuff, but it's all been with fairly... The only other moment like this would be like the jumping out of the plane with the raft thing. But at least that scene like tries to make it as plausible as it can, because they open the raft super high up, they give the impression it's like a parachute, and they crash onto snow, not the ground, and on a downhill slope. So there's like elements to that they're trying to make it work, even though it super can't. But like, dude, you can't survive a nuclear bomb because you hop in a fridge. Let alone the fact that the fridge gets flung like 3 miles away and crashes and rolls. Like, assuming he did survive the heat and the radiation, he would have been turned into little pieces of Indiana Jones as that thing crashed and rolled around. There's like so much wrong with that scene, that I'm like, why do this? And like, I feel like they only did it because the movie takes place when it does. They felt like they had to. It's in the 50s/60s now, so we have to have atom bombs and aliens, because those things were what was popular at the time. They were kind of leaning into the pop culture of that time period with stuff like that. But it's still really dumb.
Well, so it's funny that you bring up the scene in 2, because we just watched it, and the wife was like, would that really work? And I was like, absolutely not. They would all be dead.
It would only work if you weighed like 5 pounds, and thus
Right.
the raft could literally act as like a big umbrella.
Yeah,
It wouldn't work
not
with like a grown person.
2 fully grown adults and 1 child. Yeah, no way.
Yeah, that's the only other moment like that, but the nuking the fridge is far worse, at least to me.
So a question that I had for you, and I think I know kind of how it's going to go. Rank 1, 2, and 3 from first to last.
I like he didn't even like put 4. He didn't get 4 a chance.
No,
It's
I'm
not even
gonna give
allowed to
4
the
a
party,
chance.
even to get 4th. Like, let it have its given
Sure,
position.
that's fine. You can do that if you want. I won't, but you can if you want. If it's earned a spot, the last spot, you can give it to it.
Well, I guess it's indeterminate last spot, because neither of us have seen Dial of Destiny. For all we know, it could be fine and be like better than Crystal Skull. Like, I don't know. I've heard different things. I've heard people that like it and people that really hate it. I've seen like, if anything, I've seen both. But if I were to rank them, I would definitely go Crusade's the best, Temple's second, Raiders is third, and then Crystal is fourth.
Yeah. Yeah, I would probably go, like, disregarding outside opinions, I would probably go 2, 3, 1. Just because I have such a soft spot for Temple of Doom and enjoy the film so much. Like I've already said, like, I acknowledge that that the third film is the best. You know, you throw in Sean Connery, you have that story element, the comedic beats. It's just too good, you know. But you know, if I were to choose which one am I going to sit down and enjoy the most, Temple of Doom would be it for me. So 2-2-2-3-1 for me and 3-2-1 for you, which is cool.
Yeah, I think both of us recognize that Raiders is sort of this odd man out that finds itself lacking some of the things that make 2 and 3 deeper. Whether it be the relationship with Short Round / some of those just insane action sequences. Saving kids is always a great goal to have as well. If you want to see the hero succeed more in that scenario. And then 3's got the relationship with the dad with even crazier and more well-made action sequences. It's got stuff that Raiders just doesn't have. That's where being the first one kind of hurts it. But it's not like it hasn't aged well, because like it has. It's just a different vibe than the other two are.
Yeah, it is the Mass Effect 1 of the trilogy. Still good. Still really enjoyed it. Holds up really well. But when compared to the two that came later on, it just doesn't hold up quite as well, you know.
Yep. Da 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 da. Bum, ba-dum. All right, so you're gonna have to. Lucas, I'm sorry. You're gonna have to do two things now.
Uh-oh.
You're gonna have to watch Crystal Skull, and we're both gonna have to watch Dial of Destiny.
Well, I have a feeling that I will probably feel okay about Crystal Skull and be absolutely mortified at whatever it's called, Dial of Destiny. Yeah, I read reviews, man, and it just sounds like the Kathleen Kennedy formula of destroying a character that we've all grown up and love. It just looks like that again, and I'm so worried about it.
Won't know until you try. I mean, I have seen some good reviews, and apparently it got a standing ovation when it was premiered, so I mean, it can't be all bad unless that was fake.
I'm sure it was. They were all paid.
Harrison paid him. He had a whip, and he was like, "If you don't, you belong in a museum. You know what I mean? I'll whip you."
Well, like, I wish, and maybe this isn't the right thing to say, but like, Harrison Ford clearly wanted Han Solo to die, right?
Yeah.
Why not this guy instead? I don't know.
Well, from what I understand, he likes Indiana Jones.
I'm sure he does.
Whereas, like, he doesn't like Star Wars.
Yeah.
So, like, watching the making of today, dude, he was having a great time on that set. Like, I saw all these videos of him, like, happy and smiling and making jokes about things with people, and I was like, who is this guy? Yeah. So, like, clearly there's a different energy when he's doing Indiana Jones than with Star Wars, where he's just like, don't talk to me, I hate everything about this. So that's probably why. He genuinely likes it. I don't know if that's still the case today, like if that was the case prior to making Dial of Destiny. But then again, I do recall seeing some stuff where like he was excited about coming back or something like that. There's something I saw where I was like, he looks like he's into it. On top of the usual Harrison Ford stuff, where like someone asked him about the stunts and he was like, I have a stunt double, you idiot. Like there was that. Yeah. There he is. There's our guy.
There's that guy we know and love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was stuff like that too. So I don't know. I'm conflicted. But
you
yeah,
ever
he
seen
hates Star Wars.
Have you ever seen that Harrison Ford video? Where's that? There's that like there's a magician in his house, and he's like doing a trick, and the trick goes really well, and Harrison Ford is like, "Get out of my house." It's hilarious, dude. It is so funny. He says some other words that I can't say on here, but it is hilarious, dude.
I have to look that up. That sounds funny.
Oh, it's very funny. Yeah.
Forgot to mention this at the beginning of the video, but there will be there have been rather an assortment of random screenshots playing. Um, Due to all of the stuff that I'm doing on the channel, unless it really makes sense, I'm not going to go out of my way to make sure that every moment we're discussing gets a screenshot, because that's a lot of time, and I have a lot of other projects and responsibilities in the works right now. So it's a lot to juggle and deal with. So I'm probably gonna pick like some relevant screenshots around what we're talking about, and just have them rotate like every 60 seconds or so, and have that be the case.
I think that sounds great. Yeah.
Yeah, because like I was telling Tori before we started recording, the video that I just got done doing capture work for was 7 hours of footage that I had to like capture over the past few days, and I got another one in the works that's going to be similar to that, on top of other stuff like editing this video. So it's a lot to juggle. So I gotta manage the time the best I can.
Absolutely. Well, this has been great. This has been great, man.
Yep. All right. Thanks for joining us, everyone. There are going to be, for anyone that's still watching right now, if you're watching this in December when this came out, there are going to be 2 upcoming giveaways on the Discord server. 2 digital movie giveaways, kind of like what happened with the Super Mario Bros. Giveaway. Got 2 more coming in the pipeline. Titanic and Clue, the 4K remasters I'll be able to give away to someone who's a member of the Discord server. If you're a member of the server, you're part of the lot that gets the chance. One of those will go up before the end of the month, and the next one will go up for grabs for New Year's. So it'll be 2 of them. So thanks for joining us. You'll find a link to the Discord in the description, and we'll see you on the next one.
Have a great night.